Hello, I'm Ted Allaire. The following interview I did with my dad was in September 1998. Enjoy. So he did not lose everything in the crash?
No, and he didn't get involved. At that time, there wasn't that much playing around. I mean, I guess there was some of it, but playing around with, what do they call it, where you put the...
Margin?
Margin, yeah. And he didn't believe in that either, so that he did retain, he had intercontinental rubber, U.S. steel, and
That's
some
great.
of the things that,
Didn't
they
totally
went
collapse.
from 200 down to 2 or something. But they did come back,
Right.
more or less, and that was part of the effort to give my dad some money to pay part of my tuition.
Right.
I think he paid most of it, but as I say, it wasn't a big deal, fortunately.
Did your dad also at that time pay for Jim and John to go to college?
John went to college. First, he was in the Marines, and he was a non-com, and that's why he is not too good. He always resented me being
And you were an officer and he was enlisted?
He was not an officer, yeah.
Did he ever get his college degree?
Oh, no. John wasn't a pilot.
No, but I mean, did he ever go back and get a college degree?
Oh, yeah.
He did.
And that's where he met his first wife.
Helen?
He went to Cornell University, which is in Ithaca, New York.
Right.
Up upstate.
Up in the Finger Lakes?
Yeah, exactly. You know your geography.
Well, I spent 3 or 4 months up there last fall, just flying to Rochester, Syracuse, Albany,
Oh, yeah.
all those places, Buffalo.
Right. But anyway,
He got a degree from Cornell after he did his Marine Corps
yeah, sure.
stint.
Yeah. And how he was out in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And he fortunately didn't get killed. So,
How about Jim? Did Jim do any military service?
no, he was, he always got out of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, of course, he was, when I was first in, and after he married this girl, he went to Brooklyn College. He went to Brooklyn College for a couple of
Quarters?
no, not quarters, but like, even
Semester?
a half year or so.
Semester?
A couple of semesters. But then he had gone to Peter Cooper's Institute, which was a civil engineering deal. It was sort of similar to the one my dad went to, Polytechnic Institute.
Right.
And it wasn't an Ivy League college, but
Right.
it had good training.
Right.
So anyway, he said that it hurt him in Turner Construction Company, and I think he was a vice president of Turner. I never knew exactly.
The fact that he didn't go to a better college or
Yeah. Where'd you go to?
Harvard or Yale?
Yeah, right.
Well, I went to community college, so I don't think I would have done very well at Turner Construction Company.
Oh. Well, you went to, where'd you go to college?
I went to Dade Jr. I went to Miami-Dade and FIU.
Oh, you went to FIU. Yeah,
Yeah.
don't tell me about it. It upsets me because that was like a nightmare.
That was a nightmare.
And it was amazing that the nightmare had turned true. I mean, it wasn't a nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
You got through and you got out.
Yeah, barely.
That was an unfair situation they threw you into there.
Well, none of my professors could speak English. That's the story of my life in South Florida.
Yeah, well, that's more of the same as what Di's going through now,
But, for Di, it's identical. In fact, it's probably even worse because this is 1998, and I was going to college in 1986. So,
The one thing that saved Diane now, and it's very important, is that uh, she has a skill that the employers don't care. If you can do data entry, it doesn't matter whether it's in Spanish or not.
You do it quickly and correctly like I do.
And she is very well liked by most of the higher up people. I'm
Right.
sure the CEO of that company probably is telling the woman who's her boss, make sure she doesn't get away.
Well, Di has always been liked by the higher ups in every company that she's ever worked for because she helps them make profit.
Yeah, right.
So back to the Fordham story.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You started in '39.
No, I started in '37.
Oh.
You see, my grandfather died in February, and I guess they settled the estate and everything. And my dad did. He told me he did have money to pay my tuition.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to go. So then I got a job at Macy's, and I worked there. Gee, that was interesting.
Where was it?
It was in the main office on 34th Street in New York.
34th Street and what avenue?
7th Avenue.
Wow, right in the heart of New York City.
Yeah, well, that's where the big main store is.
Wow.
And
What was your job title?
well, I was a stock person,
Okay.
and we worked when the store closed. We came in, and I was in a dressing goods department where they had these big bowls. I had to, of course I was strong enough, I had to turn and straighten out those counters because and then I had to, some of the salespeople helped me arranging it because they wanted it in some kind of a congenial
Arrangement?
arrangement of the blacks and the blues, and then the colors here, and then it ran up to the light colors, the whites and the
Right. But like shirts and
yellows.
outfits and things?
No, this was just piece goods on a roll.
Oh, okay.
You know, to make dresses or whatever.
Oh, material.
Material, you know.
On like a what do you call it?
Well, they were just on a cardboard roll,
Oh, okay.
and they were pretty heavy if they were just new.
Right.
Anyway, that was my first job, and
What do you call those dress bolts?
they were bolts. I think they called. I mean, you know, not metal bolts.
Right, but that's what you're referring to. I never heard
Yeah.
bolt used that way.
Right.
Okay, so you did that. You got hired.
I did that, and I think it was in '38 I was hired. I was hired for Christmas.
Oh, that's great.
And at the end of Christmas, because I was a good stock boy, and I wasn't stealing, and they had an awful lot of stealing,
Probably did.
and the people took cashmere socks and pinned them inside their pants
Mm.
so that the
So they'd stay warm.
security guard would have to take their pants off in order to catch them.
I used to work at Grand Union as a cashier, and the ladies would come in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they'd take all kinds of chicken and steak, and they'd stick it in their clothing, and they'd walk right out, and there wouldn't be a thing you could do except wave.
Anyway, after Christmas was over, I sort of cozied up to the manager of, I guess he was responsible for the stock boys, and he was a high-class executive for Macy's. So he told me after Christmas, he said, well, I want you to keep on if you like to work, continue working. So he said, but I think I'll put you in a different situation. So he, that was the time he put me, he said, I'm going to put you in the food expensive department store. Food is very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
It's imported, you know.
Right.
And he said, and I want you to clean the meat cutting machine once, because if you do it more than once, you probably lose a finger or so.
Good
And
advice.
he showed me how to do it. And you just had to get hot water, and you had to take the cards off this round blade.
Mm-hmm.
And then you took some paper towels and got hot water on it. And then you turned the machine on, and then you held the paper towels up against the blade.
That sounds like
a sure way of getting hurt.
sounds like a Friday the 13th movie.
Oh, I avoided that movie.
But let me ask you this: do you remember your salary, your starting salary at Macy's?
Yeah, I was getting like, I worked 4 hours a night from like 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock. And I worked 6 days a week, I think. And I got like $12 or $13 for the week.
So that's like 55 cents an hour.
Yeah, it was really pitiful.
But 55 cents an hour, it would be difficult to calculate what that would work out to today, but it would probably be like
It really was
a few dollars an hour, several dollars an hour.
But I think they did take care of me, and they raised it up pretty much. But I was supposed to guard all of the food was up on one of the higher floors in that building, and it was like the 6th floor.
Right.
And all of these rich women would come in there, and they'd get this, anchovies and blah, 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 and all of this
Fancy schmancy
fancy stuff. So after that was over, I mean, that was sort of continuing, but eventually I worked with them until 1941, when I had my appendix removed in February, March, and I was exempt from most of my classes in the senior year, which was good news to me.
You got credit for it?
Oh, yeah.
Why was that?
Well, because that was just, it was sort of a hardship on me, the fact that I couldn't go to school continuously after my operation.
Oh, okay.
And I finally came back part-time or something. But there was the income tax, and that, I needed that.
H&R Block?
Well, let's see. It wasn't the H&R Block, really. It was. I went to the service after I graduated from Fort.
Right.
So.
Immediately thereafter, or had Pearl Harbor occurred?
Well, here's the way it worked. I did graduate, and I got a legitimate diploma, so that was important. And
put you in a different category for being drafted and things?
Yeah, but I still couldn't get a commission because I didn't know anybody in Washington.
Right.
So
you would have had to have gone to a commissioning source like Officer Candidate School or something.
Yeah, right. So the way I got my commission was that the fact that I was willing to risk my life and fly, I was able to trade that and get a commission.
Well, did you know that Chuck Yeager, who is now, I guess, he's about your age or perhaps 2 or 3 years younger than you, was in the Air Force for 35 years, retired as a general, and never had a single day of college.
Yeah, I think I read that.
In fact,
Yeah, I read his book.
yeah, he never went to college a single day, and he retired as a general. So, college, schmollege, you don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, I read his book. It was really good.
So you, the thing I'm just trying to get is the timeline between graduating from Fordham and Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, well, I graduated from Fordham, and I think it was that year that I told my mother that I would like to take her on a trip, take her up to New England. And we decided to go around the 15th of September because the kids are back at school.
Right.
Not our kids, but the roads were great and the weather was pretty darn good. And so we went up, and it was sort of fun for her because she had her honeymoon up in. We didn't go up on
White Mountains?
the White Mountains. I mean, we went up in the area there, but we didn't go up to Mount Washington, which is about 10 or 12,000 feet high.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn high on anything in the United States.
What, in Vermont? Or?
It's in New Hampshire. And they have a train that goes up the mountain, and the boiler is straight, but the wheels are like this. And it was a cog train. They have cogs that it turns a cog, and the cog, the cog fits into a little
Slot?
little what?
Slot?
Well, not a slot, but it's just a continuing thing where there's
Like a conveyor?
no, it's in the middle of the railroad track, and the cog fits into this continuous piece of metal that has little boxes like that, and the cogs fit in there.
Oh, I see.
And
Hopefully you don't derail.
Yeah. But anyway, we've had pictures, and Chris Gracie, I didn't see any of them when I was out there, but they had cables holding the metal shacks on the top of the mountain there. And I don't know what they did up there, whether it was something for something related to the
Stability of the,
well, I mean, I don't know. I think that was just a mountain there, and if people wanted to go up it, they could go up on the train and just enjoy it. But there was no factory up there.
Right.
So.
So you and your mom did the trip around September 15th of 41.
Yeah,
and that was just a great trip?
It was September of 41, right. And it was excellent because we took about 5-6 days or maybe more.
You took the Pontiac?
Yeah, we took the Pontiac. And I guess my father was still in Washington. And so we went up to Connecticut, up through Connecticut. And I got 2 weeks vacation from Macy's. You know, when I came back from the service, I was on leave of absence from Macy's for my whole 6 years in the service.
Because it's a military duty, so you
Yeah.
can get official
Right.
leave of absence.
But I was able to get 6 weeks, I think it was 5 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks,
A paid vacation?
a paid vacation after I came back. And of course, it was very difficult giving up Macy's Association.
Oh yeah, well they're still around. They're one of the few big companies that's been around for 80 years.
I'm sure I could have become a controller of one of the stores, like in Kansas City. They had a store. They had one in San Francisco. And because when I graduated from Fordham, I went into the personnel office and I said, "Oh, I've been working over here for 3 years or whatever, and now I want a job up in the controller's office.
Is that comptroller or controller?
Controller. So, you know, it's a big debate. You know, you can debate it for weeks. No, the controller is the one that, you know, records all the transactions and summarizes them and makes the reports.
Right.
But the comptroller is more a money man who's borrowing money from the banks, and he's
To purchase capital equipment for the company?
Yeah, right. And,
So that would have been, I guess the good thing about Macy's is you would have accumulated a lot of years of service. If you had stayed with them, you would have gotten credit for your time that you went off to the war and then come back, and you would have had seniority.
well, yeah, they already gave it to me. And then of course, well, when I went, after I graduated, then I was working in the controller's office.
Right.
And my boss, his name was Stu Conklin, and he had just come from, he was the chief auditor for Macy's. Now, Macy's was a big, well-thought-of department store. And
That was a big shot job.
yeah, well, he took me aside and he said, look, Frank, I enjoy having you work here and all that stuff, but well, you haven't gotten your CPA yet. And he said, you better go back and he said, I'll tell you what you do. He said, I worked several years for, how many years he worked for Price Waterhouse, maybe 10 or 20. He was like maybe 30 years old, and I was not that old. I was like 20 years old. And he said, go down to 56 Pine, where Price Waterhouse has their original office, and talk to the man he gave me the name of the personnel guy. So they did me a big favor. I was sort of slightly mad at Stu after he said, okay. I said, yeah, I got the job. But, you know, I had to take a pay cut. And I'm not too happy about that. So, anyway, I was making $200 a month or something. And so I had to, I forget how much of a cut I took, but it was a cut. It just sort of irritated me that I was making less down there. However, I was getting legitimate, good accounting experience so that I could get my CPA. So then the long story about the CPA, I tried to, I was always on the road, you know, well, oh, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. This is before the war, so I was working in the fall of 41, and then the war came.
But before Pearl Harbor was invaded, the war started in 1939.
Oh yeah.
So what was everyone in America's opinion of a war that was being waged in Europe? Was it no big deal?
No big deal. They didn't want to get involved, you know.
But really no big deal. People weren't that.
That's where it was.
So basically, life changed drastically with Pearl Harbor.
Oh yeah. We saw it yesterday.
Yeah.
2 days ago.
Pretty interesting reenactment down at the airport.
Yeah, they were pretty big bombs.
They were big bumps. But basically, caught America sort of fat, dumb, and happy, not really worried about the war, and next thing you know, they're embroiled in the middle of a war.
Yeah, well, typically, and I hate to admit it, that, you know, the Navy, I don't think, even after Pearl Harbor, you know, they were...
Sunday morning?
It was Sunday morning thing,
Yeah,
you know,
sleeping it off.
Boy, I'm sorry, but I was out last night, and we had a great time, and I got to sleep in this morning. I didn't worry about dumb Japs.
Well, the Japanese apparently are familiar with our customs of staying up late and carousing on Saturday nights. I mean, they didn't invade Pearl Harbor on a Wednesday. They would have gotten their heads handed to them.
Yeah, but you see, no, the people were not doing their job better than the Navy people were, because they saw a bogey and they didn't believe it. You know, they said, "Oh."
They thought it was they thought they were B.
A test thing.
No, they thought they were a squadron of B-17s that were returning, that were scheduled to return that day, and they misidentified. You know, in those days.
Did they mention that?
Yeah, they did. In those days, they didn't have any information next to the
instantaneous, you know,
radar identification.
Yeah, right.
They had the radar blip, and based on the size of the blip, you could tell if it was a big plane, a small plane, or a hummingbird, or 50 airplanes. And so they saw a huge blip and thought, well, there's that squadron of B-17s that's supposed to come in, when in fact it was the entire Japanese militia coming over to. And the Japanese, he also said, were so cocky that they even sent a warning message via teletype minutes before the attack. Because they were so cocky, they were like, "Here we come, stop us if you can." And they killed 2,400 people in one day.
Sunk a lot of ships.
And they sunk 40% of the entire naval fleet there at Pearl Harbor.
That's a real bummer.
Well, for their part, it's probably one of the great successes.
When I was in, because I was in Honolulu from time to time during the war, flying the PB-2Ys, and just, you know, as transportation. And I saw one ship. It was a baby carrier. I think it was the Essex. And it was just beat to hell with bombs on the deck and whatnot.
Where did you see it? You saw it?
I saw it in dry dock in Honolulu.
Let me ask you this. Had you given any thought to the military before Pearl Harbor?
Just to get out of the draft.
But were they drafting before Pearl Harbor?
Oh yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
We weren't even involved in the war, though.
No, but I'm sure that the people in Washington or whoever
anticipated.
They, as you said, well, then what did the U.S. think of all that Hitler stuff over there?
So the people in the CIA, no doubt, had an inkling that we would become involved at some point. They probably thought it was inevitable. So they started up the draft, and they had some way of determining who was eligible to go over there.
Yeah.
So did you get stuff in the mail? Like when you were getting ready to go to New England with your mom in September, were you getting mail periodically saying, come on down to get your military physical and register for the draft?
Well, I had already, I think there was a deadline. At a certain age, you had to go to your local draft board and sign up.
Wow.
And then they call you whenever they wanted to.
And when you're getting drafted, that's being drafted into the Army, not being drafted into the Navy or the Marine Corps.
Well, that was the whole point, and I never had a good feeling for the Army, so I thought I'd be crawling around on my belly.
So you did like preemptive, you took a preemptive approach to join before they got you.
The funny thing is, and this is, it should be recorded, that I decided, since my mother had a gallbladder operation in November, I think, and I talked to the Navy and told them that I wanted to get in the Navy, but I didn't want to have to go out of town because my mother was in the hospital. And so they said, okay. So So they gave me duty at Floyd Bennett Field, which is, I don't know whether you ever saw Floyd Bennett Field, but it's...
I think it's what became Brooklyn Coast
yeah,
Guard Air
you said
Station.
you saw it when you were going in and out of
Yeah,
JFK.
what's the name of
It's
that
on
thing?
Flatbush Avenue.
Just across, yeah, what's the name of that little point that sticks out there?
Well,
I was talking to you about it last month,
Yeah.
but go on.
but anyway, so they said, well, okay, we can make you storekeeper third class. You know, sort of a big bummer, but it did what I wanted. I could commute. I could live ashore at home in Flora Park, and I had a 1930 Essex car.
That you just bought?
Yeah, I bought for $35.
That's great.
And I drove it, and unfortunately I hadn't learned about the repacking the front wheel bearings. And when I was getting ready to leave town, wherever I was going to go, well, I was a third-class storekeeper, and then I worked the deal, and then I got interviewed for the Navy pilot deal, and I got in, so then I left town, you know.
But you had to do the third class storekeeper stuff for a few weeks before you got the pilot interview?
A few months.
A few months?
Yeah.
So from when to when? Like November to February?
I think I signed on, and unfortunately I lied because I didn't have that many ribbons to wear, so I put on, I had like 3 badges, you know, one for the European, because I was involved in maybe worrying about U-boats in the Atlantic, and then I was...
you kind of stretched the interpretation for eligibility.
Yeah, there was somebody got in bad trouble in the Navy or Army or something, because they were wearing a bunch of stuff.
2 years ago.
Yeah. But it was like October, and I had come back after a nice vacation with my mother in New England, and we came back through the Adirondack Mountains. Now, if you know anything about the topography up there, that is, you know, that's a bunch of mountains up there.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And then we came back down the Hudson River, I guess.
Right.
And that was a great trip. I don't know whether anybody has albums that have some of those pictures, but I'm sure we took pictures. But the first night we stayed at, went out to Cape Cod and stayed at Hyannisport or someplace like that. And then I think we went all the way out the next morning to the end of Cape Cod. And then we came back in. And then we ended up at Cape Ann, which is above Boston.
Right.
And we stayed at a
bed and breakfast?
Bed and breakfast, yeah. It wasn't called the slayest thing, but the next morning we looked out and we couldn't see anything because
Pea soup fog?
Cape Ann sticks right out into the bay there or the ocean, right above Boston.
Right.
And that was really thick. I wouldn't go in any place in a car.
Well, I spent whatever it was, I guess it was April, up in Portland, Maine, and you couldn't see the building across the street from the hotel.
Well, what we did, after we left Cape Ann, we really enjoyed that little place there. It was so quaint. We came back in and went up US 1, I guess.
That's
Not in
neat.
Miami, but up
That's
there.
neat.
And we went, I think we went into Maine. And where were you in there?
I went to Portland.
Yeah, it could have been we went up to Portland. And then we cut and went into New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, right. That's pretty up there, too.
And we saw the old man on the mountain, and we stayed in very nice places. And then we went through the Green Mountains, and I think we may have even taken the ferry across Lake Champlain.
Oh, that's great.
Because that's right in the between.
Actually, it's not.
No, it's not a. Is that controversial thing?
The senator.
They made it not a finger lake.
A Great Lake.
Great Lake. That's
the congressman.
I don't buy that.
Well, if you look at it on the map, it's hard to find. The rest of the Great Lakes you can see them on a globe.
But anyway, we came back down, and that was a great trip.
Well, I guess the thing that's so ironic is you're having a great time with your mom driving around up in the country, New England, but in the back of your mind, you must have been thinking about the fact that you were going to have to come back and answer the music
I was
and possibly
already
be
signed
gone.
up at the Floral Park. What do they call it? The
Draft office?
The draft office, yeah.
Well, I remember when I was 14 or 15, and about that time is when they started doing conscription again, and that's when they started, I guess, mailing out. I don't know if Bob got one, but they started mailing these things out, and you had to fill them out, and you had to bring them to the post office. And even though I ended up going in the service, it just was weird. It's one thing to go into the service because you want to become an airline pilot, and it's another thing to go into the service involuntarily, being dragged all the way by your ear, because Uncle Sam is saying, "Hey, we want you." That was a creepy feeling to have to register at the post office, possibly go in against your will.